Okay, now that I'm all set up on the other side of the fuse, I'm going to work on installing the master on-off switch or fail-safe switch and the ignition switch. You want to have your ignition system separate from the radio so you don't have any RF interference. And this optical ignition kill also comes with an LED that you can mount on the outside of the fuse. So it's easy to see whether you've got power to your spark plugs or not. So what I do is I put a little piece of the famous blue painter's tape here, and I get my slide or my flat edge ruler, and there's the former that runs here on the model. There's a shelf on the inside. I want to make sure that I put all my switches above that, but on the flat piece of balsa here so that I have something to attach to. So what I'm going to do is set up my ruler here and mark my line slightly above where the former is. Make sure that I have plenty of room, and I don't want to go any lower than that when installing this. It also gives me a good guide on where I'm installing it. I'm at fail-safe. I'm going to use the pin flag, and I love these because they have the cute little, danger removed before flight. Just like the full-scale ones. I have one on my keychain, which is really funny, because don't you need the keys in the ignition to fly? So why would you want to remove it first? And we're going to mount this right here next to the canopy. I'd rather not use a drill. It tends to eat up the monocoat and tear up the balsa, and it is lightweight stuff. I just use a reamer. I got this one from my Align bin from the Heli Tools. I'm just going to put my hole here. And this will cut the monocoat and the balsa at the same time. Test fit this, and nope, need to go a little bit bigger. You want this to be a snug fit because it relies on the shoulder of the nut to help secure it in place. So you don't want to go too big. Alright. That looks like it's going to work out good. So I'll set this aside for right now while we mark the next one, which is going to be the on-off switch. Now this is really handy because you can take the plate off and use the plate as a template for where your screws need to go and the slide for the switch. When installing the switch, I like to follow one of my friend's piece of advice, and this was his fear at the field. It could happen. You never know. But you're flying around and a June bug's flying around too. Comes through your prop, slides down the side of your fuselage, and turns off your ignition switch. So for that reason, I always mount the switch so that the on position is towards the rear of the plane. That way if that June bug comes by, the only thing he's going to do is affirm the fact that the ignition is on. Line this up here. Get our pen, and we can mark the slot and the two mounting holes. And now I can go back and use my same tool punch through for the mounting screws. And to save some time with the X-Acto knife, I run a couple holes in the square, or the rectangle, for the ignition switch. Oh. The X-Acto knife's on the other side of the table. Alright. Now remember, you marked with your pen on the inside of the rectangle. So as you're cutting it out, you want to make sure that you remove all of your pen marks. So cut just slightly outside, and that'll help make sure that your ignition switch doesn't bind. Just do a rough test fit here. All right. Now we've got one more to go, and that's for the light, the LED. And we'll put that just a little bit further down. And that one's going to be the same size as the pin flag switch. And that'll pop right in there. And we can peel this away. And it's all nice and clean. Now we'll just pop this out a little bit. Grab our trusty bottle of CA, a little bit of gap filling. And all it takes is just a little dab. Just enough to hold it in place. That way if you ever have to take it out because it burns out or shorts out, it's not impossible. You hope it doesn't. So next, we'll get the switch installed. Oops. I meant to do it that time, really. Alright, there we go. We got all our switches installed. Let me go ahead and take a break here. I'm going to grab the Loctite and redo those 3 things because that's metal on metal. I don't want them to come loose, so let me get the Loctite. Okay, for the next part I'm going to install the Ernst adapters, which I've already installed on the servo extension. But it'll be a nice clean install on the top here. I removed the vanes to make it easier, and I went ahead and put down my thinnest blue masking tape. And you can use the backing plate from the Ernst adapter. Make sure you give yourself enough room away from the cabane that you can plug it in. I'm using a finger width right here. That way I know I can get at least one finger on one side of the plug to plug it in and unplug it when it's time to leave the field. The most depressing part of a trip to the field, packing up to go home. And we'll make it the same on this side. Okay, and then we'll get the X-Acto out, and just like before, make sure that the hole is a little bit bigger than what you marked because you're tracing on the inside. that. And then we'll take the reamer and do the 2 little pilot holes for the screws. Now with all builders, they usually have some sort of method to their madness, and getting into those inner workings can be troublesome. I like to make sure that when I install these, I always have the ground wire towards the rear, because after all, when we're flying, we're leaving the ground behind us. And I have it so that the flap opens up towards the cabane. So I know every time I plug it in, ground is to the rear, and the little cover protects it over here. And we got a nice snug fit. Alright, let's go ahead and pop this all out. And we can pull the masking tape off. And then I'll go ahead and work on installing the screws and hardware and get the other one in. And we'll check back in a little bit.